welcome everyone to the first edition of Batty Talks. This is a solo podcast where I get to talk about things that I've been doing or have checked out. On this first episode, we are talking Mortiis, The Return, special guest Subterranea and Graveren. So last night, I was asked to go review Mortiis' Era 1 show in Toronto. It was presented by Inertia Entertainment, held at Velvet Underground. As a general thing, just to start off, I want to say that the show was really well put together. Velvet Underground and Inertia did a fantastic job. Everything ran on time, which, if you know me at all, is something I complain about a lot. I find a lot of promoters don't respect their clientele. They run behind. There's always problems. There was none of that last night. So really big up to Inertia Entertainment and Velvet Underground for making sure everything was running smoothly. Now let's talk about the show itself. The Era 1 show, or Era 1 period of Mortiis, is his Dungeon Synth phase. He is the progenitor of this sound. And it really feels very epic, very big, but also very oppressive. So going to a live show in a 350-ish person room, I was kind of wondering how this is going to play out. A lot of times, more experimental, more atmospheric events I've been to have always been in smaller spaces. With Dungeon Synth, a lot of the times, people just kind of play through. You know, you have one song flowing into the other, this beautiful ebb and flow. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this played out in a bigger space like Velvet Underground. And I got to say, it played out really, really well. So let's start with this review talking about the opening act, Graveren. They are out of Montreal, a solo project, which is a big part of Dungeon Synth. It tends to be small footprint things. Now, they started their set draped in smoke and the stage washed in red. Very much a druidic look to them. And really that kind of image stayed the entire time. It wasn't the most dynamic show. The nice thing is they did do a lot of live drums, and there was definitely live keys. Unfortunately, their kind of stage setup hid what they were doing, so you couldn't really see exactly what they were performing, but it was very obviously they were playing along. The drumming you could see, but you didn't see a lot of it. I would have liked to see a little bit more theatrics, maybe some kind of video or staging to go with it. But that's a relatively small complaint given the quality of the music. I was there with some friends talking about what was happening. And at one point in time, I turned to my friend Dave, and went to him and said, you know, Crawl the Conqueror would be immediately improved 50% by simply replacing the entire soundtrack with Graveren. And that was kind of the feeling I got from this big, epic, dark music. The kind of thing you'd expect is here for traveling across windswept mountains in a giant epic fantasy. But something more gritty, more grounded. I'm not talking like a high fantasy, like a Lord of the Rings. Something definitely a lot grittier than that. Just beautiful, beautiful music. And the drums were just so powerful. And it was nice seeing them being played live, because it added that extra punch to what was happening. From there, the show progressed to Subterranea. Now, Subterranea is a good friend of mine, alias Anesthesia. She performs in Slut Mother as well as DJs with me as part of Alter. This time, Subterranea was a two-piece. She was joined by Undulation's Serge. So we had some live guitar going with the atmospheric. Now, one of the things that's a little bit different about the way Subterranea approaches Dungeon Synth is that it is full songs. It is super atmospheric. but they are proper songs, and it really leans heavily on Alia's operatic training. She has an amazing set of pipes, and she uses them like an instrument. A lot of times, the vocalizations in Subterranea's music is not there to provide a message, but to add a weight, to really reinforce that mood. And it was a really nice contrast to have that vocals between what she was doing and what happened with Graveren and after with Mortiis, which were all just music. There was no vocals except for a little bit of sampled vocals in a few tracks. But her live vocals made for a very powerful, emotional piece. She went through a number of the songs off her EP and debuted a new song. The new song definitely shows an evolution of where she's going with her sound. It seemed to have a bit of a Middle Eastern flair to it, which I really appreciated. And if I was trying to give you an idea of the feeling of what was coming through, where Graveren was like the soundtrack to something like Crawl the Conqueror, Subterranea comes across as the siren's call. This is the sea calling you home to your death. It is very alluring. It has this cold, dark feel to it. The name Subterranean definitely is applicable. The imagery of the ocean cave that's been used with her promotional material and stuff on her website and Facebook, etc., definitely is appropriate. This is cold water feeling, Baltic Sea, Arctic Sea, that kind of darkness, that deep, wrenching water that is what comes with it. After Subterranea finished up, Mortiis took to the stage, and it was brilliant. While Subterranea and Graveren stood with a very static, red wash stage, Mortiis actually had a few extra pieces in there. He brought in a bunch of staging for what he was doing, a couple of large banners, as well as the dead branches and trees that were set up around the stage. He also used a lot more dynamics with the lights. The lights were set to slowly change colors between reds and blues, and some of the moving head washes on the stage were just sweeping very, very subtly. Mixing that with the smoke and the heavy atmospheric of his music, you had this all-encompassing darkness. Part of me, again, my kind of one-off things that I think of when I'm feeling these shows and trying to encapsulate an emotion was the idea that, I just want to go kill a bunch of Romans now. I want to go sack Rome. It's that kind of barbaric feeling. You think of the legions coming through the mist, running into the barbarian hordes, the Gauls, and whoever else, or think of the Vikings moving through the woods to their battlefront and to loot and raid and fight. And it was that kind of heavy atmospheric. The lights rippling off the trees off of the banners that had fans put on them and kind of gave these really ghostly apparitions at times, and it was just stunning. Combine that with the heavy atmospherics of Mortiis's dungeon synth. Like, this guy is a progenitor of the generation of the Mortiis is a progenitor of the genre, and it comes through. Like, It is very authentic. It is very real. You push us back to thinking about what was being done when he started doing this, right around the time he was 18, 19, 20. And it is haunting. It is powerful. It is dark. It is weather from the Arctic. It's that perfect summation that could only come from a place like Norway. And the performance itself was amazing. He was on stage playing actively. There was a very sizable crowd for a Monday night. I couldn't get too close to the stage, but you could see the entire time he was playing and doing and interacting with his instruments, and it made this very electronic act feel very organic. And I really appreciate that. It's a hard thing to do, and it definitely worked. And I can say it definitely worked by looking at the crowd. One of the things about Toronto I find is there's very little crossover of scenes, and I didn't find that last night with Mortiis. There was a lot of different people there last night from a lot of different scenes. I saw people from the industrial scene. There's people there from the horror punk scene. There was a bunch of different flavors of the metal scene, including two dudes in like blue jean jackets, one with a Guns N' Roses patch, one with an Iron Maiden patch. Then you had, my collection of friends who came into this from the goth and industrial side. It was a big cross-section of the dark music scene. And it was really cool to see because I find that so very rarely. You might get that in like the biggest acts, like a Rob Zombie or a Rammstein or something like that. But to see that in a cult band like Mortiis, it was really nice to see and did a lot for me personally. I can't recommend going to this concert enough. If you get a chance to hit Mortiis on this Era 1 tour, please do so. People local to Toronto, you get to see Graveren, they're Montreal based, or you get to see Subterranea, who is Toronto based. Make sure you go and check out their shows. Their performances definitely showed they belong there, and I hope to see this grow more and more. I think Dungeons works better in smaller rooms, but when you have 3 acts that cared about the atmospherics and the quality, it did scale up very beautifully into, this 350, 400 person room. So with that, I want to thank you very much for listening to my review of Mortiis Era 1 at Velvet Underground. The regular Cat vs. Bat podcast will be back shortly. Don't forget, we release on the second and last Tuesday of the month. If you're in Toronto, May 19th, we are doing the 1-year anniversary of the Cat vs. Bat podcast party. We're going to be at the Boat from 10 p.m. to close. It's going to be myself and Mr. McCutcheon, along with our cohorts, The Wasteland and DJ Vernal Trash. Lastly, I want to thank Mortiis for inviting me out to his show. I'd also want to thank him for providing the music that I've been talking over. It's been his song of a long-forgotten ghost. Off of one of his earlier pieces, I'll make sure I put a link to it down below. You can get a ton of his stuff on his Bandcamp, a lot of it for free. I hope you get a chance to come out and check out the tour, or if you've already seen the show, have some thoughts you're willing to share with me. Until next time, I've been Batty.